Right. Now I think I got my life together and we are live right now on YouTube. I'm Eddie Francis and please bear with me. I am going to share this with a couple of folks so that they can know where to catch the live stream. I really appreciate you and I definitely appreciate if you are joining me right now. I definitely appreciate your patience with me. So, needless to say, this is my first time doing the live stream, and it is going about as well as I expected it to go, which is in a pretty goofy way. So I am going to tell folks on Facebook, join me now at. I'm going to tell them to join me right now, and I'm going to tell folks to on my other Facebook page to join me in this other spot as well. Um, the funny part is that this is about personal branding. So now you get to know the part of my personal brand is goofiness. All right. Personal branding, the journey at. All right. So we got that. All right. So we got that. And again, I do appreciate if you are joining me right now. I am going to get this thing going in just a little bit. I had to do a quick pivot and let folks know where this thing is actually happening right now. All right. All right. All right. Yes. 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 As we used to say back in the day, yes, yes, y'all, and I will get into the good stuff. And of course, this is going to be available afterward. It is going to be available on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. So let me just get my stuff straight here. Yeah, that looks good. Oh, awesome. And I'm also going to get myself on Instagram Live really quickly. Hopefully, I will not fat finger these. And I did already. I already did that. All right, personal branding. Uh, the journey of the details. And let's rock and roll on Instagram and let's get this thing going officially right now. Good afternoon. My name is Eddie Francis. And thank you so much for joining me for personal branding, the journey. I definitely do appreciate if you are joining me on LinkedIn. I appreciate if you are joining me on Facebook or if you're joining me definitely here on YouTube. And I just popped in my Instagram live so that I could get some Instagram live action. So this thing is scheduled to end in 45 minutes. Yes, it is going to get done within 45 minutes. And I invite you to ask me any questions at all that you just may have about personal branding and my thoughts about it and why I do it and all of that good stuff and why it's important and why you should do it and how it could move the needle for you. So let me just get started by saying my personal branding journey, like anybody else's, it started from the beginning. When I decided that I was going to really intentionally do it, it was something that I was doing. Let me see, oh man, just under 20 years ago. And I had just found out about personal branding and I was trying to figure out what this whole thing was about. Well, even though it started almost 20 years ago, the personal branding journey, it restarted in a very big way just over a year ago. Just over a year ago, I was doing this job that I absolutely loved. And then it came to an end. It happens, right? And so here I am trying to figure out what it is that I am going to do next. So I'm thinking, you know what? Let me just go get another job. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply for the same thing that I've been doing. I was a director of communications and marketing at a university. The thing was, is that I had been burned out. And so my wife asked me a very important question. I get home and she goes, okay, are you going to apply for the same kind of position? I said, of course I'm going to apply for the same kind of position. I got to keep this thing rolling. Brother got to work, right? And she said, okay, let me ask you this question in a different way. If you do this again, are you going to flip tables? And I said, yes, I am going to flip tables probably my first week because I am burned out. And she said, listen, why don't you just take a beat and figure out what it is that you really want to do? That really froze my brain. Think about what it is that you really want to do. I did two things that week that were the best decisions I have made in my career. I took a week to rest and reflect. I took a week to rest and reflect. And so I got started on this new journey. I reinvented myself. I got a call from a friend of mine who was also a coworker. And it was a few weeks later. And I had just gotten into all the stuff that I was headed to, I was heading my new direction. As I like to tell people, I was exploring this wide open road of a career, of what I really wanted to do. And this friend of mine calls me and he says, man, I've been watching the stuff that you've been doing. I've been watching on social media. And he says, you've really reinvented yourself. That's really good. I don't know how you did it because we were in a very intense situation where we were working. He said, but listen, you're doing a great job. Keep doing it. And then I get another colleague who tells me the same thing. She says, I was really worried about you. It was very clear that you were burned out, but you have found this way to reinvent yourself. And you still love to do what you do. I can see that you're still attached to what you were doing before, but you're doing, it looks like things that you were meant to do, things that you wanted to do. And so that's what I want to talk about this afternoon. That's why I'm doing this, because I've had conversations with folks who are resume clients of mine. I love to do resume design as part of my business. And they've said, I'm trying to figure out how to reinvent myself. I'm trying to figure out how to pivot from what I was doing before. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure that out. And a lot of it was attached to really trying to figure out what it is that they would do that was going to stick, that was going to really make their careers either move in a different direction, move in a more productive direction, or if it was just going to be a gentle nudge in another direction of what it is that they were doing. They were just trying to figure these things out. Some people were just starting their personal brand journeys because all they had done was a job, and they had never really thought about what it is that they wanted to do to make themselves memorable to people. And so, with that being the case, allow me to introduce myself formally. My name is Eddie Francis. I am the founder and I am the principal and I'm a brand strategist. Edify Ventures is my company. I do personal branding, I do organizational branding services as well. My background is a combination of marketing and communications, talent acquisition, and mass communication. And when I say mass communication, I mean, I'm talking about radio, podcasting, even when it comes down to freelance writing. I had done that before. And because of those backgrounds with brand management, brand development, marketing, I really got this understanding of what it is to manage a brand, what it is to launch a brand, and what it is to manage that brand. When it comes to talent acquisition, I got a really good idea of what it means to make someone an employable product, to make them marketable when they're looking for a job. But then at the same time, doing what needed to be due to satisfy, doing what needed to be done to satisfy the business goals of the company that was looking for the talent. And then mass communication, whether it was my radio career, whether it's podcasting, I really got this idea of audience behavior and audience responses to what people were doing and what we were doing on the air and those sorts of things. And so there are three things I want to share with you. Looking at a combination of all of those skill sets and looking at how I can really work with people as far as brand positioning, making them marketable people, and then also getting an idea of what people may respond to or what people may not respond to. There are three things I want to do within the next 40 some odd minutes. I want to talk about why personal branding matters, why it still matters, how you can start or restart your personal branding journey. And then also, I want to talk about tools that can make your personal brand stick. So, why does this thing even matter? Well, as far as personal branding is concerned, the way we know it right now, it actually started back in 1997, this guy named Tom Peters, he wrote this article called "The Brand Called You," and that was for Fast Company. As a matter of fact, if you Google "The Brand Called You" right now, it is going to come up on Fast Company's website. So it is something that is still very much available all these years later. And that really set off a big old movement of people trying to figure out how to brand themselves. Now, personal branding as a concept really isn't new. I mean, it's something that folks have been doing since the beginning. And so, um, what happened is that when Peters wrote what he wrote, it really gave a language, it gave a definition to personal branding. But there were a couple of things in that piece that he wrote that I really thought was very cool. And one thing that he wrote was about a brand being the promise of the value people will receive from you. And then also, he talked about a personal brand um, being something that would come from a credible leader. And also, he did talk about reinventing ourselves, get this, on a regular basis. So maybe in my case, I had not reinvented myself enough, or maybe I hadn't thought about the ways to reinvent myself. But then here's a part that I really liked about what he wrote. He wrote that when you develop a personal brand, you're leading you. So I would argue that when we talk about personal branding, it is not necessarily about showing yourself off as quote unquote a product, but it's really more internal work that is more geared towards personal leadership, personal growth, personal development, so that you can get the kinds of results that you want to get from the things that you're doing. Oh, by the way, I have a quick side note. So there's this part in the article that Peters wrote, and remember, this is 1997 when this man wrote this. But my very favorite part of the article, reading it now in 2024, is when he referred to that other killer app of the net called email. Anyway, all right. So, why does personal branding matter? It matters because it can lead you down this path of personal leadership, right? It's a key to self evaluation, personal branding. It is a key to personal development, a key to personal growth. Now, that's if you're willing to be honest with yourself. And I'm going to get to that in just a little bit. If you're willing to be honest with yourself, if you're willing to be honest about the things that make you uncomfortable, but then at the same time, you do celebrate your identity and value. That is who you are and how you contribute to those around you. The authentic process, that is what moves the needle for other people to take notice of you. The authentic process, being authentic, is what's going to draw other people in. A long time ago, I was with this division of monster.com called Making It Count programs. And we did these free in school presentations and on campus presentations at high schools and colleges about education and career success. There were about 200 speakers with this thing. I was one of the lead trainers. And there was a guy who got up at one of our trainings, and he really, really wanted to be a part of the crew. And one of the things that we would always tell speakers, the trainers, we would always tell them, listen, teenagers are not going to be nice when they criticize you. You got to be yourself. And the way to earn criticism from teenagers the fastest is to not be yourself. So my man gets up, he starts speaking, and we all worked from a script, but we could personalize the script. And he gets to this part of the script where he said, yeah, when I was in school, I wore the best clothes. I would pop my collar. And I said, stop, stop, sir. So the first question I had for him was, okay, I would imagine, just looking at you, that you were in high school, late 80s, early 90s. He was like, yeah, yeah, about late 80s, early 90s. I said, okay, were we popping collars back then? He said, oh, no, 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 we weren't popping collars. I said, gotcha, gotcha. We weren't popping collars. Okay. But if we were popping collars, would you be a collar popper? And he said, well, I say, stop. It seems as if the answer to that is probably no. You would not have been popping your collar. You would not have been the one. I'd say, were you wearing the finest fits? And he's like, well, I wanted to. I said, okay, here. I said, listen, we are off the rails at this point. And I said, teenagers sniff that sort of thing out. If you are not being honest about who you were back then and who you are now, they are going to run over you. And I don't care if it's an audience of 50 teenagers, it's going to feel like 500 of them are running over you. Personal branding is about that level, or I should say, that depth of authenticity. It matters because it serves as a guardrail for you to communicate who you really are and what it is that you really stand for. So let's move on to this next thing about personal branding, and that is how to start the journey or how to restart the journey. Because that is the place you want to start, who you are and what it is that you stand for. Um, when I was doing marketing and communications, direction at one of the universities where I worked, we had to do a brand refresh campaign. Well, we didn't have to, but we chose to do a brand refresh campaign. And the brand was there. When I got to the institution, I went in and I started doing my own data collection. I did all these focus groups with folks because I wanted to get an idea from folks about what it is that they truly saw as far as value was concerned at that institution. And so I start talking to people. I'm doing these focus groups with alumni. I'm doing them with students. I'm doing with faculty and staff. And there was a problem, a big problem. The problem was every time I asked them about their value, they would start referencing other institutions. I said, okay, that's fine. I get it. I get it. Your peers, your competition, all that good stuff. I got it. But what about you? What makes you valuable? What about this place? And again, they would start punting to other institutions and talking about what it is that they wanted from other institutions. And so they were distracted every single time I talked to folks. They were really distracted about what was going on with the rival, what was going on with the other institution about 3 or 4 states over, what's going on with the one with the big brand name and all of that good stuff. By the time we ended the brand refresh process, and we came up with something that folks actually did like. But by the time we ended that process, there were two things that I learned about branding: be true to who you are. And then also, if you're not truly different, then there is a way to be distinct and to make just as much of an impact. I'm going to get back to that in just a little bit. But being true to who you are, I have a colleague by the name of Ethan Braden, and Ethan is the head of communications and marketing at Texas A&M. He was doing a session along with some other friends of mine from a company called Ology, which is a marketing company. I actually partnered with them on that brand refresh campaign. And then a representative from Reese's. And wait until I tell you the Reese's guy. That was hilarious. So he he said something. I have some brand quotes that I'm crazy about. Ethan's is one of them. And one of the things that Ethan said in that session is how well a brand is expressed externally depends on how well it is understood internally. I'm going to say that again. How well a brand is expressed externally depends on how well it is understood internally. In personal branding, if you don't really understand who you are, nobody else is going to believe who you are. You have to believe in who you are. And you have to believe that who you are is going to work for something or for someone or for some situation. The process is best done from the inside out. One of the mistakes I see people make with branding a lot of times, especially with organizations, is they want to work on the fun stuff first. They want to work on the logo first. They want to come up with the colors first. They want to throw up the website first. They want to do the social media first. They want to do all of the fun stuff first. That is backwards because the way you get to the logo, the way you get to the colors, the way you get to the website, the way you get to the social media presence is by genuinely understanding what the value of the company is and what the value of the offerings will be as well. You got to understand this stuff internally. You even got to understand the value of the people you hired for the company. All of that stuff is what's going to lead you to a logo that makes sense. It's going to lead you to colors that truly represent who you are. It's going to lead you to the social media presence. It's going to lead you to the dope website. It's going to all represent that stuff because you understand it. One thing about the branding process is that it does take some trial and error. You're not going to get it right, most likely completely the first time. There's a good chance that you're not going to get it right completely the first time. There's some things you're going to want to tweak. Now, you can be very proud of the work that you did, but there are things that you probably are going to have to tweak along the way. So don't expect perfection the first time around. For me, I thought I had something with my personal brand. I really, really did. I was trying to hinge it on this one thing, but the one thing I was trying to hinge it on, it wasn't working because I was so worried about what other people were going to think. And so that slowed the process down for me. For some people, a personal brand is going to come organically. We saw that with the COVID lockdown, didn't we? So you have some of these folks on social media who have millions of followers. And you're like, wait, who is this? How did this person? And as it turns out, they might have had like 2,000 followers before the COVID lockdown. And then during the COVID lockdown, they lost a job and they had to figure out what to do. Or they had a job, but they decided to talk about stuff they were really passionate about. They created videos that they were really passionate about. And next thing you know, they have 1 million followers, 11 million followers, 20 million followers. That grew organically because they were just doing something that pleased them at the time. They were doing something they thought would be entertaining. They thought that they were doing something that was just informative, and that's okay. But for other people, the process is much more intentional. For me, the personal branding process, much more intentional. Really, really having to figure out what it is I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it, and really trying different things out. The idea, when it comes down to it, is to figure out how you want to communicate about yourself, how you want to talk about yourself. The university where I was working, where we were going through the brand refresh, and I was sitting there just struggling, trying to figure out why is it the folks could not talk about the value of the institution based on the value of the institution. The problem was they didn't know how to talk about themselves and the value they brought forth to the market. So there are some steps here. And the steps, when it comes down to how you can start creating this brand for yourself, number one is to start with your why. Why are you doing whatever it is that you're doing? What is it? What is your mission? How do you write that out in a mission statement? That takes work, and it takes several drafts. It might take you 20 drafts. It might take you 2 drafts. Who knows? But you got to write that personal mission statement, then your personal vision statement, and your personal core values. Core values are extraordinarily important, especially to an organization. Again, going back to the same institution, one of the puzzle pieces that made it difficult for us to do this brand refresh was that the institution did not have institutional core values. And I pushed for it. You know why? You know why core values can be so hard for people to adopt, especially as an organization? Because core values are actually a way for you to determine how it is that you're going to behave as an organization. They're guardrails and they're a standard. So that means that if you have those core values here and people are not acting the way that they should act, they are not following those core values, then that creates some internal issues. So core values can be scary for people because what happens is that you put a stamp on the behavior that you promise that you are going to deliver to your customers. So what are your core values? It doesn't have to be a scary process, by the way. I mean, you don't have to necessarily create core values that you think other people are going to appreciate. It's about what you truly believe in, what you truly believe you're going to deliver. The other thing is Decide what the source of your personal branding journey is. Is the source of your personal branding journey your career discipline? Would it be your talents? Would it be your faith walk, your ideology, your philosophical beliefs, your upbringing, something about your background? What is the source of your personal brand? That's something for you to figure out. Collect feedback to figure out who you are. Now, this can be tough for some folks because some folks are going, well, I want to be known as somebody who is always excellent. I never make a mistake. And then you talk to your mom and she's like, boy, you make so many mistakes. Oh, man, come on. But you need feedback from your friends and your family because they're going to give you the real. They are going to give you the real. That is, if they really love you. That's a whole nother issue. But that feedback from your family, your friends, your colleagues. How about this? On the job, look at your past performance reviews. If you get those, if you get performance reviews, take a look at your past ones and look at the areas where you add value. Um, if you are someone who journals, I journal. If you journal, reread your journal to get an idea of what the source of your personal brand is going to be. And then also create a personal value proposition, create a personal positioning statement. What this does is this puts into language what you believe you have to offer society or those around you. And then also what you believe they are going to gain from you. So I'm talking about all this stuff. Let me give you an idea of what I came up with. So again, with me, there was some trial and error, a lot of trial and error with my personal branding. And there were some things that I wanted that I didn't necessarily know would work out. But then there were also some things that came alive that I didn't even know was there. And so my personal mission, when I took a look at my personal brand, my personal mission became to promote ethical leadership in everything that I do. So you listen to that and you're like, well, wait a minute, Eddie. You just said, Eddie, that you were a job recruiter at one point. You said you were a broadcaster at one point. You said you do marketing communications. Where's this leadership thing come from? Very good question. I'm so glad you asked. Well, here's where it came from. I was trying to figure out what exactly was going to work, right? And I was like, okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and hinge my personal brand on broadcasting because I love radio. I do podcasting. Boom, I love it. I'll do that. But then my career pivoted. Okay. So now I'm in higher ed and I'm doing marketing and communications. All right, boom, there's my personal brand. So I'm going to do my personal brand based on how much I love, on how much I know about marketing and communications and PR and blah, 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 boom. And then I had to pivot again. Then I pivoted to talent acquisition. Oh, this is it. This is it. I'm going to be in talent acquisition for the rest of my life. So my personal brand is going to be how great I am about talent acquisition and recognizing and blah, 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 blah. Guess what happened? Pivot. I did it again. So that's the thing. If you're one of those people who doesn't necessarily have a solid career direction that you just know is going to be this way for a while, that could be kind of a drawback. And that was a drawback for me. So what happened is that I really started asking myself the question, Eddie, what gets you up in the morning and what keeps you up at night? Leadership. Because everywhere I have been, radio, career development, talent acquisition, when I was working in higher ed, I was always looking at the leaders. I couldn't take my eyes off the leaders. I wanted to know why they made decisions that they made, good or bad. I was always curious about that. I was always watching them in meetings. This curiosity just got the best of me all the time. And so when I thought about it, and then on top of that, I went to grad school. And when I went to grad school, I got a master's degree in strategic leadership. And I was fascinated by strategic leadership. I was fascinated by the stuff I was learning about leadership. And one of the questions I asked myself in grad school was, All of this stuff about leadership is really great information. It could help the most humble person reach the highest heights in their career. It could help so many people really make a difference in their communities. But all of this stuff is stuck in the academy. It's stuck in colleges and universities. There are a lot of folk out there who are not going to get this information because they're not going to grad school or they're not even going to get an undergrad degree. So who's going to tell them how this whole leadership thing even works out? So all of that went into my realizing that my mission in life is to really promote ethical leadership, because that's what I think about all the time. And I talk about it all the time. And I talk about it in brand strategy. I talk about it when I'm doing public speaking coaching. I'm talking about it when I'm helping people with their resumes. I talk about leadership definitely when it comes to radio. I talk about leadership. I dedicated 2 podcasts to leadership. And so there it is. Long story, but I wanted you to understand that that simple one-line mission really had a lot of thought behind it. Vision. The vision statement that I wrote up for myself through my brand strategy and mass communication efforts, public speaking, podcasting, broadcasting, and writing, I will become a trusted public voice in leadership development. Now, I want to just go really quickly to the word trusted versus leading, because a lot of people are going to say, well, Ed, if you're going to do it, you got to really do it. So don't be a trusted voice, be a leading voice. But here's the thing. I would love to be a leading voice. I don't think I can be a leading voice unless I'm a trusted voice. And so for me, it was more important to have the word trusted in there than it was leading. Core values. For me, my core values are resilience, intellectual flexibility, candor, and humor. My personal motto, leadership for good. My personal positioning statement, my brand strategy consulting and professional speaking help college students and professionals develop as leaders so that they can provide value to their organizations and communities. And finally, my personal value proposition, I help people lean into leadership so that their identity and value stand out. So this was not stuff that took me 3 days to write. This took me weeks. It took me weeks to come up with this. The personal brand journey is not a quick turnaround in a lot of cases. It is something that's going to take time. So I do think that one of the most important things that you need in order to create a great personal brand journey is patience. Patience with yourself. So, how do you make this personal brand stick? What are the tools that you need? Well, the first thing I think is important to understand about personal branding, as far as I'm concerned, is that it doesn't have to be public facing. You don't have to do this so that other people see what you're doing. You don't have to do it for the you don't have to do it for the gram. As a matter of fact, let me give you a crazy scenario. What if, just what if, tomorrow all social media shut down? What would you do with your personal brand? How impactful could your personal brand be if we did not have social media? Let's make it crazier. Let's say that Al Gore's internet goes away. Then what do you do with your personal brand? Believe it or not, people were finding a way to make their personal brand stick before there was this thing called the internet. And even before we had this thing called television and this other thing called radio, people were finding a way to do it. So to me, one of the best tools that you have to really promote and push your personal brand, and again, it doesn't have to be public, is personal interaction. How you simply relate to people, how you talk to people one on one. You know why? Because the most powerful marketing tool today, even with all of the technology that we have, is word of mouth. That's why. And then there are other forms of communication. I'm sorry, besides interaction. Attire is a part of a personal brand. I'm one of those people, I don't think too much, I don't dedicate too much into what I wear a lot of times when it comes to personal branding. I probably should, but then there's also vocabulary. Vocabulary is a great tool. Never underestimate language when it comes to really showing people a compelling personal brand or developing a compelling personal brand. Transferable skills are great tools. to really push your personal brand. How you communicate, the way you work with other people, problem solving, analysis, organizational. So you want to know one of the funniest things? The last university I worked, critical thinking was in the mission statement, and I was like, why is critical thinking in the mission statement? I mean, who doesn't want? Why do we have to tell people this is part of a mission? You know why? Because if you talk to a lot of employers out there right now, even if you talk to people in their personal lives, folks are just ripping their hair out at the lack of critical thinking. So, yes, critical thinking, a transferable skill, can be a huge tool to really promote your personal brand. And, it's up to you to decide how you're going to use those tools, but those are part of the toolkit. And then also, your resume or your CV is another great personal branding tool. Whenever I work with clients on their resumes, one of the things I harp on a lot of times will be their personal, or I should say, their professional statement at the top of the resume. Because as a recruiter, the first place I focused my energy whenever I would read a resume was the top third of the resume. And so what I do when I work with people on their resume design is I really, really focus a lot of attention on what it is they can say about themselves in 3 to 4 sentences. And then another tool for a personal brand, a biography. And then also public opinion. The way you express what you think of things is another big tool for your personal brand. Blogs, editorials, podcasts, broadcasting, etc. All of those different tools. And of course, there is public speaking. One of my favorite quotes about public speaking, and I do coach folks on public speaking. One of my favorite quotes about public speaking is, he or she who speaks leads. He or she who speaks leads. A guy named Ron Arden told me that, or at least he told an audience of us that. And when I start working with public speaking clients, the very first thing I tell them is that public speaking is important because it is a way to express your leadership and your leadership skills and your leadership philosophy. Think of it this way. Let's say that you are at a town hall meeting and all these people are talking and you have a question because there's something you just don't understand, and everybody's just off to the races. You raise your hand and you decide to stand up and ask this question. What happens when you stand up and ask that question? The room stops and everybody looks at you. Theoretically, people look at you because you stopped everybody from talking, you interrupted whatever they were doing, and now you decided that you want the floor. So you, in that moment, are the leader. And people will also get an idea of who you are and what you stand for by what you say. So I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts here. The first thought is this. Excuse me. When it comes down to the feedback that you get, pay attention to a lot of that, whether it comes from your family and friends or it comes from work or wherever. Pay attention to a lot of that feedback. The personal branding journey has to also, and most importantly, be about who you are and the value that you deliver to a lot of folks. But earlier, I mentioned differentiation versus distinction. One of the things that people push all the time with branding is that you got to be different. You got to be different. You got to be so different. And I hear this with personal branding a lot too. All right, what do you do that's different from everybody else? So let me tell you one of the best lessons I ever learned from higher education and doing brand work there. There are nearly 4,000 colleges and universities in the country. Where I was working, we discovered that the most valuable thing about where we were was the sense of family that people had there. That's what came out in the data. Full stop. Overwhelmingly, people said, I love the sense of family I have here. And people said, oh, come on, man. You can have family at the university that's a few miles away. You can have a family at any one of these universities because all the universities are small. That doesn't make us special. And I said, well, it doesn't necessarily make us different, but it does make us distinct. What do you mean? And I said, well, here's the deal. What if we do what if we do family better than anybody else around us? Or what if we talk to a student who is looking for this sense of family, but they're looking for a specific sense of type of family, and we are the family available for that student? What if that's the deal? Or what if we took this concept of family and we owned the market and said, hey, you know what? This is how families should look on a college campus. What if we did that? What if we called our shot on that? And people were like, oh, I don't know. I said, okay, let me tell you a story. This is another story from this higher ed symposium I went to. This other story is that there was a guy there from Reese's, and the guy from Reese's said, you know, one of the funniest things about Coors, the beer, is that their brand is cold. That's what they do in all the commercials, right? It's all about the Rockies and the cold of the Rockies and all this good stuff. And he said, what beer isn't cold after you put it in the refrigerator? I mean, if you get Coors off the shelf, it's going to be room temperature like all the other beers that are lined up next to it. If it's in the refrigerator, it's going to be cold like all the other refrigerators. But what Coors decided to do is they decided to say, our beer is best when it's cold, and our cold beer is better than anybody else's cold beer. So I say that to say that for you, a personal brand, you want to be so different, which is great. But there's a good chance, because I, I don't know if you know this or not, but there are a whole lot of human beings on a planet Earth, and a lot of us have the same talents and the same ways, the same attributes. A lot of us are the same height. We have the same kind of hair or no hair or whatever it is. How different can you possibly be from another person, even if you have a special ability? How different could you possibly be? However, if somebody says, you know what, so and so, you are one organized person, and I need an organized person, and you are the person who actually leans into that organization. You are what that organization needs at that time, and you are bringing your brand of organization to that organization. That's a win for you, and that's a win for the people who were looking for someone who was highly organized. So yes, being really different would be great. But if you're not all that different, then be distinct and decide what your distinction is so you can push that. At the end of the day, personal branding is about what it is that you bring to the table that folks around you will appreciate. If they can depend on you, then you'll be known for it. Thank you so much. If you're joining me on YouTube, I really appreciate you joining me. And if you are joining me on Instagram Live, thank you so much for joining me. I don't know if anybody has any comments or anything. I can't see any comments or anything like this, but here's the best part. The best part is that this presentation is available on YouTube. And so I will make sure I kick this link out to you. Thanks again for joining me for Personal Branding, The Journey.